Welcome to the silent verdict.
With Clara Monroe and Elias Gray.
Can you outsmart the casino so spectacularly that they refuse to pay your winnings?
Yeah.
I mean, really win big.
Well, for one Chicago man, the answer seems to be a very loud, very contentious maybe.
Yeah, maybe. We're diving headfirst into a really fascinating case today. It throws a spotlight on this high-stakes clash between a gambler who says he cracked the code and casinos holding on to millions.
It's quite the story.
Okay, let's lay out the bet. We've got Thomas McPeek, 24 years old, from Chicago. Now, he wasn't just, randomly throwing chips down. He claims he used science and, well, cold, hard math to work out a winning sports betting strategy.
Science and math. Okay, interesting angle.
Right, so over just 1 week, he's at the Horseshoe Casino in Hammond, Indiana, that's owned by Caesars. He bets $30,000. And he walks away, or thought he did, with $350,000.
Wow. Okay, hold on. $350,000 profit on a 30K stake in a week.
Exactly. That kind of return makes you immediately think, okay, what was his secret?
Absolutely, but it doesn't stop there, does it?
Not even close. Fast forward a month, he uses supposedly the same strategy, but at a different Caesars casino. This time, it's in Bentonville, Iowa.
Okay.
And lightning strikes again. Another $450,000 in winnings.
Good grief. So that's, what, $800,000 total winning?
$800,000 total. But here's the twist, the real kicker. Both casinos hit the brakes hard. They voided his winning tickets.
Voided them? After he won? On what grounds?
Their justification, a mix of house rules and anti-money laundering policies.
Okay. House rules and AML. Vague but potentially powerful tools for a casino.
You bet. McPeek naturally is crying foul. He insists he played completely by their rules. And now, he's considering legal action.
As you probably would be. So this is where we need to dig in, right? What are the actual legal landmines here?
Exactly. This isn't just about one guy's massive win, potentially. It raises these fundamental questions about casino powers, the rules they play by, and, what rights do bettors actually have.
Let's start with those rules. Caesars mentioned house rules. What specific rules could they possibly point to here? And the anti-money laundering thing, how does that even connect?
Yeah, the house rules part seems key. What's buried in the fine print that lets them do this?
Yeah.
And how does winning fair and square suddenly look like money laundering?
Well, house rules can cover a lot, from betting limits to conduct, and crucially, the casino's right to refuse or void bets under certain conditions. Here, it seems, the big one they latched onto was McPeek crossing state lines to place the bets.
Ah, the state lines issue.
Yeah. And for the anti-money laundering, or AML policies, they exist to stop dirty money flowing through the casino. Big wins, especially if combined with attempts to be anonymous, like McPeek apparently did. That can trigger alarms.
Okay, let's focus on the state lines thing for a second. Caesars is saying him going from Illinois to Indiana, then Illinois to Iowa, breaks betting regulations. But does driving across a border to place a bet in person really void the bet? Is that legally sound? What's the casino's real worry there?
It usually boils down to jurisdiction. See, each state has its own gaming laws, its own tax rules, its own regulators. Casinos are licensed state by state.
Right, makes sense.
So when someone bets across state lines, it potentially muddies the waters. Which state's rules apply? Where do the taxes go? Are they even allowed to take bets from someone from that state? It's a regulatory headache they often want to avoid.
Okay, I get the regulatory angle, but here's something that really makes you, raise an eyebrow. An expert points out that Caesars only voided the tickets after they realized how much McPeek had won.
Ah, the timing. Yes.
Why is that timing so critical? What does it suggest? Feels like a pretty important piece of this.
It's hugely important. It really goes to the heart of fairness, doesn't it? If they knew he was crossing state lines or had concerns about his methods before he racked up $800,000.
Why wait until after he wins big to bring down the hammer?
Exactly. It suggests they might have been happy to take his $30,000 bet hoping he'd lose, but then use the rules as an excuse when he won big instead. It looks, well, opportunistic, like they're applying rules retroactively to dodge a massive payout. Not exactly fair play, is it?
Doesn't sound like it. Now, back to the anti-money laundering angle. You mentioned the large wins and his attempts at anonymity that disguises the small kiosk bets. How could winning legitimately trigger AML flags? What would the casino be seeing there?
Well, even if it's totally legitimate, $800,000 in a short time is a lot of money. Combine that with actions that look like structuring multiple small bets instead of one big one and trying to hide his identity.
Even if he had an innocent reason for it,
Yeah.
like not wanting them to spot his strategy.
Right. Even then, those actions can unfortunately mirror tactics used by actual money launderers. Casinos are legally required to be vigilant about this stuff. So large sums plus unusual behavior equals a compliance review. It's almost automatic.
Okay, so the casinos have their reasons. McPeek has his stance. What about the actual referees, the state gaming commissions? What have they said? They're the ones who oversee this, right?
They are, and their input is vital. Now, the Indiana Gaming Commission, they've apparently stated that Caesars did follow its rules in the Indiana case.
Ooh. So in Indiana, the regulator sides with the casino.
Seems that way, based on the statement. We don't know the exact reasoning behind that finding, but it definitely helps Caesar's case for the first $350,000.
But what about Iowa? The second win? The $450,000.
That's different. The Iowa Gaming Commission is actively reviewing McPeek's complaint about that win.
So Iowa hasn't just rubber-stamped it, they're looking into it.
Correct. They seem to think there's something worth investigating further there. Why the difference between the two states? That's a really interesting question. Could be different rules, different interpretations.
Okay, let's break down the core arguments. Caesars. He broke the rules crossing state lines. What's their strongest justification for even having that rule? Beyond the regulatory messiness you mentioned.
Well, they might argue it ensures everyone betting is legally eligible under that state's specific laws. Maybe concerns about responsible gaming, stopping people from bypassing restrictions elsewhere, and just maintaining the integrity of their local license and agreements with the state. It's about control and compliance within their licensed territory.
Fair enough. Now, McPeak's side, he says he played by the rules. But the anonymity thing, kiosks, disguises. If it was all above board, why do that? It still feels a bit odd.
It does raise questions, for sure. But think about it from his perspective. If you genuinely believe you have a winning edge, a system.
You don't want the casino to figure it out too quickly.
Exactly. He might have feared they'd limit his bets, change odds on him, or just kick him out if they realized one guy was consistently winning big. The disguise, the small bets spread out. Maybe it was just a tactic to fly under the radar long enough to maximize his advantage. Doesn't automatically mean he thought he was breaking a specific betting rule, you know?
Plausible. Okay, now the experts weighing in. We've got conflicting views. One, former casino exec, now a professor, thinks Caesars was justified. What's the likely thinking there from someone inside the industry?
Someone with that background probably sees the casino's perspective very clearly. They understand the intense regulatory pressure, the need for strict compliance, the financial risks.
Right.
From that viewpoint, McPeek's actions crossing state lines, the anonymity might look like deliberate attempts to skirt the system or at least operate in a very gray area. So voiding the bets becomes a way to protect the casino and ensure they're seen as complying with all regulations. It's about risk management and following the letter of the law, perhaps.
Okay. But then you have another expert, a betting author, siding with McPeek. And their reason isn't about how he bet, but when Caesars acted.
Right. Back to the timing issue.
What's the core of that argument? Why is the timing everything for this expert?
Their argument is likely grounded in fairness. Basically, there's an implied contract when you place a bet. If Caesars had a problem with how he was betting or where he came from, they should have flagged it before he won $800,000.
Not after the fact.
Precisely. Waiting until he wins big makes it look like they only enforced the rule because it saved them a massive payout. This expert probably feels a casino shouldn't get to change the rules or selectively enforce them after the outcome is known. The risk should be shared, not just dumped on the bettor after they win.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense too. Let's quickly walk through the key moments, the turning points. First, that initial $350K win in Indiana. What happened right after? Any immediate reaction from Horseshoe?
In fact, McPeek felt confident enough to go to another Caesars property a month later and do it again, suggests. Well, it suggests they probably paid him out for the Indiana win, or at least didn't raise a huge stink right away.
Interesting. So maybe the alarm bells didn't ring loud enough initially.
Or perhaps they rang, but the decision to act came later. That initial silence, though, could be significant if this goes to court.
Then the second win, the $450 in Iowa. Since the state line issue became their main reason, did the fact he crossed again solidify their decision? Was that the tipping point?
It certainly seems like the pattern of crossing state lines became the central pillar of their argument for voiding both sets of winnings. The first win might have been a flag, but the second, Larger win across another state line likely triggered a much more serious internal review and cemented their decision to withhold all the money.
And the moment they actually told him, when they voided the tickets, do we know exactly what they said to him then? Was it just rules broken or more specific?
Initially, it seems it was the broader house rules and anti-money laundering policies. Pretty vague.
Right.
But later, it became clear that the primary violation they were hanging their hat on was the state line crossing. The AML stuff seems to have been triggered by the amounts and the anonymity attempts prompting the review. But the state line issue emerged as the key stated reason for the void.
Okay. And the fact that we have these opposing expert views, it just highlights how murky this whole thing is, doesn't it? No clear right or wrong, it seems.
Absolutely. It shows the tension between the casino industry's need for control and compliance and, well, the bettor's expectation of fair play. Interpretations of rules, especially when hundreds of thousands of dollars are on the line, can differ wildly.
And the Gaming Commission's getting involved.
Yeah.
That takes it out of just being a dispute between McPeek and Caesars. Now there's official oversight.
Yeah.
What does that mean going forward?
It's a big deal. It means state regulators are examining the situation. Indiana siding with Caesars is a point for the casino there. But Iowa's ongoing review that keeps the door open for McPeek regarding the $450,000, it shows Iowa isn't just taking the casino's word for it.
So where does that leave us? What's the current verdict? Still up in the air.
Pretty much. No final legal verdict yet, especially since McPeek is talking about a lawsuit. It could drag on.
But we know Caesar's position. Banned from their casinos, but they'll give him back his initial $30,000 stake.
Right. Which basically says, we acknowledge you placed the bets, but we dispute the win because you broke the rules. Banning him reinforces that.
And then there's that other casino in Michigan City, Indiana. Different company, presumably. They also banned him after he won $127,000. But they paid him first.
Yeah, that's a really interesting contrast.
What does that tell us? That different casinos handle big winners differently.
It certainly suggests that. Maybe different interpretations of rules, different risk tolerances, maybe different specific circumstances we don't know about. But paying him out first before the ban, that suggests they felt obligated to honor the bet, even if they didn't like his methods. It highlights a lack of consistency, perhaps.
And with Indiana's commission backing Caesars there, McPeek's fight for the $350 case seems tough. But Iowa, that's the wild card, isn't it? What happens if Iowa rules against Caesars?
Well, if the Iowa Gaming Commission finds Caesars wasn't justified in voiding those bets under Iowa regulations, they could potentially order Caesars to pay him the $450,000. That would be huge. The different state responses really underscore how fragmented gambling regulation is.
Okay, so boiling this all down, what are the key takeaways for anyone listening, anyone who bets, even casually?
Number one, absolutely critical, read the terms and conditions. Seriously. The fine print. Casinos and sportsbooks have detailed rules, including the right to void bets. You need to know what you're agreeing to before you bet.
Sounds simple, but probably often ignored.
Right.
What else?
Be really careful about crossing state lines to gamble. As this case shows, it can create major headaches, even if you're betting in person. Stick to one jurisdiction if you can. Avoids any ambiguity.
Good advice. And if you do win big,
document everything. Keep records. Screenshots of bets, odds, receipts, everything. If there's ever a dispute, that paper trail is your best friend.
This whole thing also kind of touches on a bigger question, right? With sports betting booming, can you trust the house to play fair if you actually find a winning edge?
It definitely raises that question. Regulations exist, yes, but enforcement can sometimes feel subjective, especially when payouts are huge.
Yep.
Makes you wonder about the power imbalance and whether the system truly protects bettors who manage to beat the odds consistently.
And the elephant in the room. McPeek's actual strategy. Science and math. We still don't know what it was. That leaves you wondering, doesn't it? How did he do it?
It's the $1 million question, almost literally, or $800,000 question. The mystery around his method just adds another layer of intrigue. Did he find a real edge, or was there something else going on?
So we're left with this. $800,000 potentially vanished. A huge win disputed. Was it, by the book, a fair application of rules? Or was it sour grapes from a casino facing a massive loss? The line seems incredibly blurry.
It really does. It forces you to think about where the power truly lies in the gambling world and how fair the game actually is when the stakes get this high.
So for you, the listener, if you think you found that edge, that winning formula, how protected are you really if it works? What steps can you take? McPeek's story is a stark reminder, isn't it? The win might just be the beginning of the battle.